Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, creator of the College of the Dead comic book series, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and former board member of Platinum Studios, where we turned comics into films. Cowboys and Aliens, you ever heard of it? It's a pretty cool movie. Okay, so today we're talking about this article in CNBC from September 18th. Disney CEO Bob Iger, I believe if Steve Jobs were still alive, we might have combined with Apple. Well, isn't that interesting? So Disney and Apple have been talked about as merger partners for many years. And Disney, of course, entertainment company with lots of distribution, and Apple, tremendous brand awareness, tech favorite, incredible phone company, incredible device company. And now Apple is worth more than $1 trillion now in market value, meaning stock value, if you went to buy up all the shares in the stock market. And the value of Disney is it changes obviously from day to day, but roughly about $250 million. So a Disney Apple merger would be really an Apple acquisition of Disney, which, I mean, that would be kind of interesting. Although what a monolith that would be, right? So this article, though, is talking about something that Bob Iger actually specifically said. So Disney Bob Iger says that he believes he would have discussed a merger with Apple had Steve Jobs lived past 2011. And of course, they probably actually did discuss it, privately. And, it's not the first company that Disney would have bought from Steve Jobs, having bought Pixar earlier. Iger left Apple's board last week after Apple announced its Apple Plus TV video streaming plans. So Iger was on the board of directors of Disney. Steve Jobs used to be on the board of directors. Iger was on the board of directors of Apple. And Steve Jobs used to be a major Disney shareholder because he sold Pixar to Disney for cash and stock. And Iger had to leave Iger had to leave Apple's board because they're now really directly competing with their streaming services, Apple having announced it. So there'll be all sorts of competitive conversations that go on in boardrooms about, well, what are we going to do about this? Our competitors doing that? What do we know about this? And normally with a conflict on a board of directors, what you do is certain board members might leave the room for certain things. But when it's a core business, like restaurant to restaurant, or like this is streaming service directly competing with streaming service, there's no way you can continue on each other's boards. You have to leave the board. So as it says here, an Apple acquisition of Disney today would be the largest acquisition ever and may not pass regulatory scrutiny, meaning that it would just be so freaking enormous that it would get looked at from not just the United States, but China also somehow has the authority to say, no, we don't approve of this merger. And the European Union also has veto authority on some mergers. And if the United States said, well, go ahead and merge, and China said, well, we don't approve of your merger, it would mean that they could still go ahead, the merger, if they're both U.S. companies, but it just means that China might ban them from doing business in that entire country, which would be incredibly expensive. So unfortunately, other countries even have a say over what happens with American companies if they want to do business in those other countries. Gets a little complicated. So this is all according to a passage from Bob Iger's autobiography that was published recently in Vanity Fair magazine. And Iger writes, with every success the company has ever had since Steve's death, there's always a moment in the midst of my excitement when I think, I wish Steve could be here for this. Because Steve used to be on the board and they used to be excited about this kind of stuff together, which is nice camaraderie. It's impossible to not have the conversation with him in my head that I wish I could be having in real life. More than that, I believe that if Steve were alive, we would have combined our companies or at least discussed the possibility very seriously. They definitely would have discussed it because they really do have very limited crossover in the businesses that they're in. And they do give each other kind of a special complementary business model if you think about it. But as consumers, we would be very concerned to see them being able to have so much control over so much entertainment and communication and media and access to consumer products. I mean, it's really quite tremendous. So Iger had written of his close relationship with Jobs, spurred by Disney's decision to acquire Pixar, Jobs' other company, for $7.4 billion in 2006. And it used to be that Disney only distributed Pixar's movies. Eventually, they managed to get Pixar to agree to let them acquire them. That deal put Jobs on Disney's board, as we were saying earlier, and Iger joined Apple's board in 2011 and remained until last week when Apple's foray into streaming video prompted Iger to resign, the streaming service we had talked about earlier. So yes, analysts have speculated about an Apple-Disney merger for years, and it would be interesting. And given the size of Amazon, the fact that Amazon is in every conceivable business and continues to diversify into multiple businesses, you could almost see something like that happening. The one thing that makes it extremely risky, though, is Apple's lack of expertise in the media business. A $250 million, even to Apple, a $250 billion acquisition of a far-flung business like Disney that is heavily into entertainment and consumer products, but it's got an incredibly diverse portfolio of properties, of ways that it makes money, revenues from direct-to-consumer marketing, products licensing, theme parks. How the heck do they run those theme parks? If you've ever been to the Disney theme park and you look at it, you say to yourself, like, my God, that is a big operation. These perfectly manicured lawns and employees and people from all over the world and terrorism threats. And they own ABC and they own, it's cable channels. It's endless. And now the new streaming business where they're directly competing with Netflix and competing with Apple. There's a lot to be done running Disney. And the other issue Disney has is the management, where Bob Iger has been there for the last 14 years making acquisitions, is about to change. Bob Iger is not going to stay there forever. He always winds up extending another kind of year or two, but he's been looking to retire for years. So how the heck would Disney be able to be acquired by another company that doesn't have a strong background in media and be able to maintain what it is that they have in all their far-flung operations, to say nothing of the fact that they now are going to be dealing with a class action lawsuit, which I covered in another video that's about to get announced, because of the $6 billion whistleblower accusation of fraud during the years of 2008 to 2009 in the theme parks unit. So it starts to get very complicated, but it is interesting. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I would not want to see a merger between Apple and Disney. Why don't you tell me in the comments if you like the idea of an Apple Disney merger, or if you don't like it. Make sure that you do subscribe, though, to the channel, and also click the bell for notifications and like this video and share it with your friends. It's an interesting subject, and things do keep changing. I would prefer to see a merged Apple and Disney than to see Amazon be 5 times the size it was if one of the two things had anything to do with each other. And I also want you to find out all about my comic book series, College of the Dead.
Hey, how you doing? College of the Dead is my 140-page zombie apocalypse comic book. It's black and white. It's completely done. The first printing ships October 31st, 2019. Make sure you get a chance to get a copy of this. It's on Indiegogo. It was successfully fully funded. All the money was raised for it. It's going to be shipping in October, and that will be the first printing. We'll have a few copies of that beyond what people pre-ordered, but not a heck of a lot. So go ahead and make sure you get a copy of this. And you can see the link in the description below. You can also go to collegeofthedead.com. It will take you to where it's currently available. And I'll tell you what, this is a phenomenal comic book. You can see the cover of book 2 right here. We're working on that right now to finish it for January 2020. And these are the interiors of College of the Dead, book 1, all done by the same artist, Javier Aranda. He's a phenomenal artist. And go ahead and check this out. I know you're going to love this comic book.